There comes a moment in life when silence speaks louder than arguments, distance speaks louder than promises, and absence speaks louder than affection. This is not the loud, dramatic kind of loss. This is the quiet realization that something valuable slipped away because it was misunderstood while it was still there. When a woman loses a good man, the panic doesn't arrive immediately. It creeps in, slowly, disguised as confidence, at first disguised as freedom, disguised as relief. But over time, reality begins to whisper truths she can no longer ignore. And those whispers grow louder every day. A good man is not loud. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't compete for validation. He doesn't threaten to leave every time things get difficult. Instead, he shows up consistently. He listens even when it's uncomfortable. He stays calm when emotions run high. And that calmness is often mistaken for weakness. His patience is misread as tolerance without limits. His loyalty is taken for granted. His emotional availability is assumed to be permanent until one day it's gone. The first sign she lost a good man and is panicking is confusion. Deep confusion, not about him, but about herself. She starts questioning why the new attention doesn't feel the same, why the compliments sound hollow, why conversations feel shallow. She thought replacing him would be easy. She thought why good men are often taken for granted. Anyone could fill that space. But now she's realizing that consistency has a weight to it. Stability has a depth to it, and not everyone carries it. That confusion becomes the first crack in the illusion she created to protect her ego. The second sign is comparison. She starts comparing every man she meets to the one she lost, not consciously at first, but subconsciously. She notices how others don't listen the same way. They don't remember the small details. They don't show up when things aren't convenient. They disappear when emotions get heavy, and suddenly she remembers how that good man stayed calm when she was emotional, how he stayed grounded when things felt chaotic. Comparison is painful because it reminds her that what she had was rare. The third sign is delayed regret. This is not the dramatic kind of regret where someone cries all night. This is quiet regret, the kind that shows up at random moments. When she hears a song, when she sees a place they once shared, when she faces a problem alone that he would have helped her navigate without judgment. Regret hits hardest when there's no one to blame anymore, when excuses run out, when she realizes that he didn't leave because he stopped caring. He left because he cared too much for too long without being valued. The fourth sign is restlessness. She can't sit with herself comfortably anymore. She distracts herself with social media, attention, outings, conversations that go nowhere. Silence feels heavy now. Stillness feels uncomfortable because stillness forces reflection, and reflection forces accountability. She remembers how that good man brought peace, not chaos, how his presence made things feel stable, and now, surrounded by noise, she feels the first sign of panic, more alone than ever. The fifth sign is emotional panic disguised as independence. She tells herself she's happier. She tells others she's thriving, but deep down something feels off. Independence feels hollow when it's driven by loss rather than growth. She realizes that being wanted by many is not the same as being chosen by one who genuinely cared. A good man doesn't chase recklessly. He chooses intentionally. And losing that kind of intention creates a void that attention alone can't fill. The sixth sign is reaching out indirectly. She may not text him directly at first. Instead, she checks his social media. She asks mutual friends how he's doing. She wonders if he's moved on. And the thought of him being happy without her stings more than she expected. Not because she wants him back necessarily, but because it confirms something painful, that he was the prize, not the placeholder. That realization hits hard when she sees him thriving in silence. The seventh sign is self-reflection that comes too late. She finally begins to see her patterns, how she tested his patience, how she dismissed his concerns, how she assumed he'd always stay. She realizes that good men don't leave suddenly. They leave after being unheard for too long, after choosing peak, over proving their worth, after realizing that love without respect slowly turns into self-betrayal. What makes this loss different is that a good man doesn't return easily, not because he's bitter, but because he's learned. He learned that Love should feel safe, not draining. He learned that consistency should be mutual. He learned that silence can be more powerful than explaining himself over and over again. And when he finally walks away, he doesn't do it loudly. Silence that starts to hurt, doesn't seek revenge. He simply redirects his energy toward a life that doesn't require him to shrink. And this is where the panic truly sets in, because she realizes that she didn't just lose a relationship. She lost emotional security. She lost stability. She lost someone who loved her without needing to be convinced every day. Someone who stood by her even when she didn't stand by herself. Someone who saw her potential even when she was busy testing limits. The truth is, good men are often recognized only in their absence. Their value is felt when the calm is gone, when the patience is missing, when the unconditional support is no longer available. And by the time that realization fully settles in, it's usually too late. So if you're listening to this and you're that man, the one who stayed calm, who stayed loyal, who stayed patient longer than you should have, understand this. Your silence is not weakness. Your walking away is not failure. It is self-respect finally choosing itself. And the moment you stop explaining your worth is the moment the world begins to feel it. Because one day, she will fully understand what she lost. Not when she's lonely, not when she's bored, but when she meets someone who makes her feel everything except safe. And in that moment, she will remember you, the man who loved quietly, the man who stayed steady, the man who walked away not to hurt her, but to save himself. And the hook is this. The most painful realization isn't losing someone who didn't value you. It's realizing too late that the one you lost was the one who would have never left if you had only treated him like he mattered. And even after that realization settles in, the mind keeps replaying moments comparing you to everyone else, once overlooked. Small gestures that felt ordinary back then now feel priceless. The way he checked in without being asked. The way he stayed consistent even when life was heavy. The way he didn't disappear when things became inconvenient. Those memories don't come back as comfort. They come back as lessons wrapped in regret. Because hindsight doesn't just show what was lost, it exposes what was misunderstood. She begins to realize that a good man doesn't make love loud. He makes it steady. He doesn't overwhelm with drama. He anchors with presence. And in a world addicted to excitement, consistency often feels boring until it's gone. She once thought emotional stability was something that could be found anywhere. But now she sees how rare it truly is. Because emotional stability requires maturity, discipline, self-awareness, and a willingness to love without ego. Not everyone is capable of that. There's also a quiet fear that begins to grow inside her, a fear that she may never find that same depth again, a fear that the men who come after him may want her body, her attention, her time, but not her growth. A good man doesn't just love who you are. He challenges who you can become. And when she lost him, she lost someone who saw her future even when she was distracted by the present. At some point, she starts rewriting the past in her mind. She remembers his patience as strength instead of weakness, his silence as wisdom instead of indifference, his loyalty as intentional rather than predictable. And that mental shift hurts because it exposes a truth she tried to avoid. He wasn't lacking. She was unready, not unworthy, but unprepared to handle a man who didn't play games, didn't manipulate emotions. Sudden curiosity about your life didn't feed chaos. She notices how arguments with new people escalate faster, how misunderstandings turn into ego battles, how apologies are replaced with blame, and slowly she understands that peace isn't accidental, it's cultivated. That good man cultivated peace even when it cost him comfort. And she mistook that sacrifice as something that would never end. There are moments when she wonders if she should reach out directly, not to get him back necessarily, but to ease her conscience, to explain herself, to say what she should have said before. But deep down, she knows something has shifted. The man she once knew has evolved. Not because she left, but because he chose himself. And that version of him doesn't need closure from someone who didn't value his presence when it was freely given. Meanwhile, he is learning a different kind of peace, a peace that comes from boundaries, a peace that comes from not over-explaining, a peace that comes from realizing that love should feel mutual, not like emotional labor. He isn't angry anymore. He isn't resentful. He's simply done settling for half-effort connections. And that calm confidence is exactly what makes her panic even more. Because when a good man heals, he becomes magnetic, not desperate, not loud, just grounded. And she knows that when someone new enters his life, they won't have to convince him to stay. They'll simply align with the version of him that no longer tolerates being taken for granted. That thought alone stings, more than rejection ever could. She also begins to understand that timing matters. Love requires readiness, not just chemistry. And sometimes people meet the right person at the wrong stage of growth. The tragedy isn't that love, regret mixed with ego, failed. It's that awareness came too late. A good man doesn't need perfection. He needs appreciation, respect, and emotional safety. And when those needs go unmet, even the most patient heart eventually chooses distance. As time passes, the panic doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence at night. Sometimes it looks like scrolling endlessly without purpose. Sometimes it looks like laughing in public but feeling empty in private. Because once you've experienced genuine emotional safety, surface-level connections no longer satisfy. And she knows now that what she lost wasn't just a man. It was a feeling of being truly seen. This realization humbles her. It strips away illusions. It forces her to grow. But growth doesn't always repair what was broken. Sometimes growth simply teaches you what not to repeat. And the hardest lesson of all is learning that some people are lessons, not lifelines. That some doors close permanently, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. And if you're the man listening to this, understand something deeply. Your value didn't increase when she realized it. Your value was always there. The difference is that you finally stopped giving it away for free. You finally chose peace over proving. You finally chose self-respect over waiting to be understood. And that decision changed everything, because the moment you stop chasing validation is the moment regret begins on the other side. And the moment you walk away quietly is the moment your absence becomes unforgettable. So remember this, the world doesn't always recognize good men immediately. Sometimes it takes silence, sometimes it takes loss, sometimes it takes distance for truth to settle in. And by the time she realizes she lost someone rare, understanding her emotional conflict, you're already becoming someone unstoppable. And here's the final hook. The real panic doesn't come from losing a good man. It comes from realizing that the man you lost has finally learned to live without you. And he's never been more at peace. And even as that peace settles into his life, the contrast becomes impossible for her to ignore. She notices how calm he seems now, how unbothered he is by things that once consumed him, not because he never cared, but because he finally learned where to place his care. That shift is unsettling to someone who once believed his patience had no limits. When a good man stops reacting, it's not because he's empty, it's because he's complete. She also begins to understand that love is not proven through endurance alone. Staying through disrespect is not loyalty, it's self-neglect. And the man she lost eventually realized that he didn't wake up one day and decide to leave. He woke up after many nights of feeling unseen, unheard, and undervalued. He stayed until staying meant losing himself. And when he finally chose distance, it was an act of self-preservation, not punishment. There's a quiet moment that comes when she realizes she can't recreate him. She can't ask someone else to be that patient, that steady, that emotionally present without resentment. Those qualities come from character, not convenience. And character can't be rushed or replaced. That realization carries weight because it forces her to accept that what she lost was not ordinary. It was exceptional. At times, she may even blame herself harshly. But blame doesn't undo the past. Awareness doesn't rewind time. All it can do is reshape the future. And in that future, why walking away changes everything, she will carry the lesson of what it feels like to lose someone who loved deeply without conditions. That lesson will follow her into every relationship moving forward, whether she wants it to or not. Meanwhile, the man continues building boundaries, building purpose, building a life that no longer revolves around someone else's emotional availability. He becomes selective, not bitter, intentional, not cold. And the irony is that once he stops trying to be understood, he finally is. His energy changes, his presence speaks, his silence commands respect. She sees this from a distance and feels the final wave of panic. Not because she wants him back, but because she knows she can no longer reach him in the same way. The door isn't slammed shut. It's simply closed gently, firmly, and without resentment. And that kind of closure leaves no room for negotiation. This is the moment where acceptance begins, where she understands that some losses are irreversible and some people are not. Final message: know your worth, meant to return. Not because forgiveness is impossible, but because growth has moved them in different directions. A good man doesn't punish, he progresses. And progress doesn't look back often. So if you are that man, take this truth with you. You were never too much and you were never not enough. You were simply in a place where your value was misunderstood. Walking away didn't make you weaker, it made you wiser. And choosing peace didn't mean you stopped loving. It meant you finally loved yourself the way you deserved. And the final hook is this: sometimes the greatest closure isn't an apology or a reunion. It's watching the person who underestimated you realize in silence that losing you was the turning point they can never undo.